Welcome back to class, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to look at our global agricultural system through a completely different lens. Before food ever reaches our dining tables, every single calorie has this incredibly intricate backstory. It's part of a massive, complex supply chain that involves land management, water usage, and global logistics. Now, normally, we make our dietary choices based on three pretty simple metrics: taste, price, and convenience. But as we dive into today's explainer, we're going to peel back those layers and uncover the profound, hidden backstories of the food sitting right there on our plates.
Think about it. When you're standing in the grocery store eyeing a steak, a salmon fillet, or a carton of eggs, the main cost you're registering is just the price tag on the shelf, right? But in economics, there's this fascinating concept called externalized costs. These are the costs generated by a product that aren't actually reflected in its retail price, but are instead paid for by society in other ways. We literally need to look far beyond our wallets and our grocery receipts. We have to consider the planetary ledger and our global healthcare system and ask ourselves, what is the true externalized cost of our daily protein choices?
Here is our syllabus for today's explainer. We'll start with the environmental costs of meat, then the antibiotic resistance threat, decoding meat labels, navigating seafood sustainability, and finally, small shifts with big impacts.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Environmental Costs of Meat, uncovering the backstory. To truly grasp the environmental toll of different foods, we first have to recognize the vast disparity in what it takes to produce them. Think of the Earth's arable land and fresh water as a strict personal monthly budget. A plant essentially just needs a bit of soil, water, and sunlight. But animal agriculture, that demands an exponentially larger investment. Animals require years of feeding, temperature-controlled housing, and extensive waste management. A 2014 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences perfectly lays out how different proteins spend our planet's budget. If poultry, pork, dairy, and eggs represent your standard, manageable utility bills, beef is literally like impulsively financing a luxury sports car every single month. Producing beef requires 28 times more land and 11 times more irrigation water than the average production of dairy, poultry, pork, and eggs. The resource intensity is just staggering. And when we expand our view to greenhouse gas emissions, the data from the World Resources Institute shows a really stark contrast. Protein sources derived directly from plants, things like wheat, corn, beans, and lentils, operate with a dramatically lower environmental footprint. You'll also see that some animal proteins, like eggs and sustainably caught fish, sit comfortably in that low-impact category too. However, the high-impact category is overwhelmingly dominated by ruminant animals: beef, lamb, and goat. Now, why is that? Well, ruminants have these specialized digestive systems that break down tough grasses through a process called enteric fermentation. A totally natural byproduct of this digestion is methane. And methane is a greenhouse gas that is exponentially more potent at trapping heat in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. Now, it is absolutely vital that we apply some nuance here. We are not villainizing all animal agriculture. Sustainable animal farming fills crucial ecological and agricultural roles that crop farming simply can't do alone. For example, a massive portion of the Earth's pasture land exists on marginal, rocky, or exceptionally steep terrain. It would be physically impossible to cultivate crops there. But ruminants can graze those areas, miraculously converting otherwise unusable scrub into bioavailable protein for humans. Plus, their manure acts as a vital organic fertilizer, closing a natural nutrient loop that synthetic fertilizers just can't replicate. So eating meat is not inherently a violation of ecological balance. It's the sheer industrialized volume of meat we currently produce and consume that's placing such a critical strain on planetary resources. Moving on to Section 2, the antibiotic resistance threat, the invisible superbugs. We're going to shift our lecture now from the macro landscape all the way down to the microscopic level. Antibiotic resistance happens when bacteria naturally mutate and evolve to survive the life-saving drugs we explicitly designed to eradicate them. I want you to think of the agricultural use of antibiotics like a supervillain training camp. When we constantly expose bacteria to low doses of antibiotics, which happens all the time in industrial farming, we don't actually kill all the bacteria. Instead, we act as a sparring partner. The surviving bacteria adapt, they strengthen their defenses, and through a wild process called horizontal gene transfer, they can actually share those resistance blueprints with entirely different species of bacteria. This creates superbugs that ultimately leave humans facing severe, untreatable infections. And the gravity of this public health crisis literally cannot be overstated. According to the CDC, at least 2.8 million Americans are infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria every single year. And tragically, these infections lead to at least 35,000 deaths annually. Guys, this isn't some theoretical, far-off future dilemma. It's a massive, ongoing drain on our healthcare system right now, causing immense human suffering. And the routine overuse of antibiotics in animal agriculture is a major contributing factor to this exact crisis. Historically, the agricultural industry treated antibiotics like a biological growth hack. Decades ago, farmers realized that feeding animals low doses of antibiotics inexplicably caused them to gain weight faster. Fortunately, we have made some progress. In 2017, the FDA ruled that antibiotics could no longer be used purely for animal growth promotion. That was a huge legislative victory. But there is a massive loophole. Today, antibiotics are still routinely administered prophylactically. That means they are given to perfectly healthy animals simply to prevent disease from breaking out in crowded, stressful feedlot conditions. The World Health Organization is aggressively advocating to close this loophole, arguing that we absolutely have to preserve these miraculous drugs and only use them to treat animals that are clinically sick. To really grasp the danger here, we have to map the biological escape route of these superbugs. It all starts in the gut of an animal receiving routine antibiotics. The weakest bacteria die off, but the strong, resistant variants survive and multiply. These fortified bacteria are then excreted in the animal's feces. On a massive industrial farm, this biological waste can easily leach into the surrounding soil or become runoff that contaminates local water tables. That exact same groundwater is subsequently used to irrigate nearby fields of fruits and vegetables. Finally, humans handle or consume that contaminated produce or improperly cooked meat. Effectively, a pathogen engineered in a feedlot has completely bypassed modern sanitation to take up residency in a human host. Let's bring this to the supermarket. Section 3. Decoding meat labels. Fact versus fiction at the grocery store. Navigating the meat aisle requires a pretty clear understanding of agricultural labeling laws. The federal law baseline dictates that absolutely no animal product can contain active antibiotic residue at the exact time of sale, regardless of how it's labeled. If a conventional farm treats a sick animal with drugs, they're legally required to observe a withdrawal period, waiting until the medication fully clears the animal's system before it goes to market. So, conventional meat isn't full of literal antibiotics. But if your goal is to vote with your dollar and support farming practices that do not contribute to the creation of superbugs, you want to look for certified organic. Under organic certification, farmers are strictly prohibited from using antibiotics at any point in the animal's life. If an organic animal falls ill and needs antibiotics to survive, it gets treated, but it immediately loses its organic status and is sold into the conventional market instead. But here is the critical loophole you need to know. Even meat labeled certified organic or raised without antibiotics can still harbor dangerous resistant bacteria if it suffered cross-contamination at the processing plant or from environmental runoff. The labels only dictate how the animal was raised, not whether the meat is sterile. Therefore, rigorous adherence to CDC food safety rules is our ultimate line of defense. Cook whole beef, pork, lamb, and veal to an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit and let it rest for 3 minutes. Take ground meats to 160 degrees and make sure poultry hits 165. Clean your hands and cutting boards immediately. Chill leftovers below 40 degrees within 2 hours. And crucially, ruthlessly separate your raw animal proteins from the fresh produce you intend to eat raw.
Section 4, Navigating Seafood Sustainability. The Ocean's Dilemma.
When we evaluate seafood, we are forced to balance a highly complex ecological and biological ledger. On the positive side, seafood is an absolute nutritional powerhouse, heavily lauded for brain-boosting omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA. Environmentally, the footprint of many fish species is remarkably light. They require virtually zero terrestrial land use and emit minimal greenhouse gases compared to mammalian livestock. But the ledger carries heavy detriments too. We're facing an era of drastically dwindling wild-caught supplies due to systemic global overfishing. And while aquaculture, or fish farming, seems like a great solution, it presents entirely new challenges regarding oceanic pollution. Plus, we also have to navigate the very real danger of heavy metal accumulation. To really understand the mercury issue in seafood, we have to look at a biological process called biomagnification. Heavy metals dumped into our oceans get absorbed by tiny plankton. Small fish eat the plankton, larger fish eat the small fish, and so on up the chain. By the time you reach an apex predator like a swordfish or a shark, that single animal has essentially absorbed and compounded the trace mercury of thousands of smaller organisms over its entire lifespan. Because mercury is highly toxic to human neurology, especially for fetal brain development, pregnant women and children are heavily advised to avoid these apex predators: king mackerel, marlin, orange roughy, shark, swordfish, tilefish, and big-eye tuna. Conversely, lower trophic level fish like salmon and sardines carry minimal mercury and are strongly recommended 1 to 3 times a week for optimal cognitive health. Honestly, tracking the sheer volume of variables surrounding sustainable fishing methods, geographical origin, and stock levels is just impossible for the average consumer to do in their head. So, to navigate this intelligently, I want to equip you with an incredibly empowering tool. The Monterey Bay Aquarium manages an initiative called the Seafood Watch Program. They maintain this constantly updated, rigorous database assessing the ecological impact of various fisheries all over the world. By downloading their app, you can stand right there at the seafood counter, search for a specific fish, and get immediate, science-backed guidance on whether that purchase supports robust, sustainable marine management or if it's contributing to oceanic depletion. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Small Shifts, Big Impacts, Redesigning Your Plate. The absolute most empowering takeaway from all the data we've analyzed today is that strict, uncompromising vegetarianism is not the only mathematical solution to this global challenge. The numbers heavily favor moderate, sustainable habit changes. Adopting a simple meatless Monday removes over 50 days of high-impact protein consumption from your personal footprint every single year. Substitution is equally powerful. Swapping out a high-resource beef dish for lower-impact chicken, pork, or plant-based legumes drastically alters the resource math. Finally, practicing portion reduction by culinary augmentation is a fantastic trick. If you're making a traditional meat sauce, just have the required meat and substitute that lost volume with umami-rich vegetables like mushrooms or bell peppers. You maintain the flavor profile while dramatically slashing the environmental cost. And when we extrapolate these personal, individual choices across an entire population, the data is genuinely mind-blowing. A landmark 2016 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences modeled what would happen globally if populations simply adhered to standard, medically recommended dietary guidelines. This basically just means eating a wider variety of proteins, significantly more plant matter, whole grains, and fewer processed meats. Their models concluded that these highly moderate, totally achievable dietary shifts could reduce overall human mortality by up to 10%. The simple act of diversifying your protein sources directly translates to a measurably longer, healthier life. But wait, the ecological dividends of that exact same behavioral shift are even more extraordinary. That same study found that transitioning populations toward these standard, plant-forward dietary guidelines could concurrently cut global food-related greenhouse gas emissions by up to 70%. That massive drop occurs through the compounding effect of less deforestation for cattle grazing, drastically reduced methane emissions from enteric fermentation, and a massive reduction in the synthetic fertilizers required to grow feed crops. A 70% reduction. That is the sheer ecological power you hold on the end of your fork 3 times a day. So, as we wrap up our explainer class today, I want to leave you with a direct, practical challenge. We've analyzed the stark environmental costs of industrial agriculture. We've traced the terrifying biological pathways of antibiotic-resistant superbugs, and we've armed ourselves with the knowledge to navigate the meat and seafood counters like pros. Now, the theory has to become practice. My question for you is, what is one small, deliberate shift you will make to your plate tonight? Take the data you've learned today, make a conscious, intentional choice, and I will see you